So the Switch 2 is an awesome console and I've really been enjoying it, but the original Switch is still a great console, and if you're not quite ready to upgrade to the Switch 2 yet, there's still a lot of good games and accessories that you can use to continue to get the most out of your original Switch. And if you haven't bought one yet, you can typically get a good secondhand Switch for not a lot of money, and there's hundreds of hours of game time to be had with just this one console. So let me just jump right into some of my favorite games that are still available on the Switch, and I've been playing these not only on my Switch but on my Switch 2 as well. And so if you only have access to a Switch currently and you're not really ready to pony up all the money for a Switch 2, these are some games that if you haven't played them yet, they're going to give you a ton of enjoyment and keep you occupied until you feel like it's time for you to upgrade. So first we got to talk about the Zelda franchise. These games are fantastic. Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild are two games that in and of themselves can probably give you over 100 hours each of exciting open world game time, and they can both be played on the original Switch. And they were actually initially released on the original Switch. Breath of the Wild was actually released on the Wii U and then they put it out on the Switch. But then Tears of the Kingdom was originally released on the Switch 1. Now, if you buy these games and you're worried about upgrading to the Switch and whether or not you're going to be wasting money, if you buy the original version, you can actually upgrade them both to the Switch 2 version via the Nintendo eShop. And I think the cost of upgrading the games is somewhere around 10 bucks. And then we've got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. This is another one that came out on the Wii U and then was re-released on the Switch and upgraded a little bit. This is another one that I absolutely recommend buying. Now, what I would recommend today is if you can find a very affordable used copy of this, you can get it and then get the online booster pack for the new courses. It brings back a bunch of the Double Dash courses, and then there are a bunch of other courses from previous consoles and different Mario Kart games that are available in this with updated graphics, and they've been refined a little bit, but I definitely think it's worth it. And the biggest thing about this game is the online play. I cannot tell you how many hours I've played because it's sort of embarrassing, but I think the last I checked, I think I'd logged about 600 hours on Mario Kart. And while Mario Kart World is a little more expansive, I just don't enjoy it nearly as much as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So I highly recommend getting a used copy of this if you can, upgrading the booster pack, and then getting the Nintendo Online subscription, which is honestly pretty affordable. And then you can immediately jump in and start getting your butt whipped by a bunch of Japanese kids online. Okay, and then the Resident Evil franchise is absolutely one of my favorite games. I only started playing it somewhat recently, but I'd say within the last 6 months, I have played almost every single game that is available on the Switch and Switch 2 in the Resident Evil franchise. Now, one of my favorites is Resident Evil 4. I think it has really solid gameplay, the storyline is decent, and then the game runs through a pretty vast series of landscapes and you get to fight a lot of different types of enemies. And you guys might remember that Resident Evil 4 was initially released on the GameCube, and so if you're like me and you grew up on the GameCube, it's kind of fun to go back and play these remastered games with upgraded graphics on a modern console that has the ability to use wireless controllers. Now, with the Resident Evil franchise, there are some limitations on the Switch 1. Once you hit Resident Evil 7, I think, the games are not available in a native version for the Switch 1. So you'd need a Switch 2 to play a native version that's not a cloud version. And I'm gonna be completely transparent here. I own Resident Evil 2 Cloud Edition. I do not like it. I almost don't even want to play it. I'm actually considering getting a PS5 or something just to play that game because it really runs super bad in my opinion on the cloud version. Now, Resident Evil is obviously not a game that you want kids to play, so if you're looking for games for your kids, skip these ones. Now, another absolute banger of a game that you can still play on the Switch 1 is Super Smash Bros. You can play this online, you can play it at home with friends. If you grew up playing N64, GameCube, Wii, all that stuff, you're probably gonna have a ton of fun playing this. It's not my all-time favorite game because I honestly didn't play it a ton as a kid, but every time I sit down and play it, I absolutely understand why this is such a classic. And then we've got Super Mario Odyssey. This game is super underrated in my opinion. This is a really good adventure game. I feel like these days it's getting harder and harder to find games that you know, you can sit down and play all the way through and not get fed up with it or get bored. And I just think they did an overall good job on the aesthetics and the visuals in this game. If you grew up in the 90s playing Super Mario 64, this is gonna hit you right in the nostalgic feels. You're gonna love it. And then here's another one for the adults only. We got Grand Theft Auto, the trilogy. This includes GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. So if you grew up playing these games, or if you grew up not being able to play these games as a kid, this is a perfect opportunity to get all three and to be able to play it on the go on your Nintendo Switch. And these games are honestly just a lot of fun. This is a game that you can put down and, you know, forget about for a couple weeks and then come back to it and jump right back in. And then another game that I want to mention that is still playable on the Nintendo Switch, Alien Isolation. I just started playing that game. It is a ton of fun. It's kind of like Resident Evil in terms of the survival aspects and a lot of jump scares. It gives you that same feeling that Resident Evil does in terms of the urgency to like get away and hide, or to go find more supplies and ammunition in order to survive. And then you've got all the Doom games that were released on the original Nintendo Switch. So you've got Doom 3, then you got Doom 2016, Doom Eternal. Those are all really good games, in my opinion, that are modern, that can still be played on the original Nintendo Switch. And there's even like a bundle pack that you can buy. I think you can buy it either online from Nintendo, I think you can get it on Amazon. And then I bought mine straight from Bethesda. It was actually on sale and it came with like a little model of, I think, the BFG or something like that. But this also comes with Doom, Doom 2, Doom 64, and then the other three games that I just mentioned. So even if you've never played Doom in the past, it's a fantastic game that you can get home from work, sit down for 30 or 60 minutes, shoot a bunch of demons, and then you can go do your chores and get ready for bed. Okay, so we've talked about some games that you can still get in and enjoy literally for hundreds of hours, which hopefully will be enough to hold you over until you feel like it's time to upgrade to a Switch 2. But there's some accessories that have made the experience a lot better. Now, obviously there's some controller options, because playing on the Joy-Cons is really not my favorite. I honestly don't think that the Nintendo Switch is super ergonomic. It works in a pinch, but the Joy-Cons are expensive and they just don't feel great, if I'm being completely straightforward. And so you've got a bunch of options out there for aftermarket controllers, and these controllers are also going to eliminate things like stick drift. Two really good examples that you might want to look at would be the 8BitDo Ultimate 2C controller and then the 8BitDo Pro 3 controller. Both are really good. This one's more expensive, it has a few more features, and this one is like a budget option, but still, in my opinion, it is pretty close to being as good as a Pro controller from Nintendo. Now, there's a warning about this controller in particular that I want to give you, and that is that as soon as you get it, I want you to start playing it immediately and check for any kind of issues with it. I have got one of these in the past and it started acting really funny occasionally as I'd be playing. It's like the controller just wouldn't register my inputs, and then all of a sudden it would register those inputs immediately, one right after the other, and kind of made it unusable. But I was still within the return window, and so I was able to swap it out for a new one, and no issues since. But if you buy this, don't leave it on the shelf and let the return window lapse. You want to make sure that it's functioning properly. I'd put at least 5 hours of use onto it before you determine whether or not it is defect free. Now, that may be an issue that they've fixed now. That's just my experience. I just wanted to share it with you. Now, the Ultimate 2C is upgraded from the original Ultimate that they put out. I can't remember when that came out, but this one, it has anti-friction rings around the sticks, which I really appreciate. And then you've got an L4 and an R4 button here on the front. And then in general, the controller just feels a lot better. L1 and R1 are clicky. L4 and R4 are clicky. L2 and R2, they're not clicky, but they still feel really good. And of course, the D-pad on all 8BitDo controllers is solid, which I really appreciate when I'm playing old retro games. If you've seen any of my videos, you know I love the Pro 3. I think this is kind of like one of the best controllers that you can play on the Switch or Switch 2. And if you buy this now for the Switch 1, you can absolutely use it on the Switch 2. They put out a firmware update so you can run it and pair it on the Switch 2 with literally no problem. This controller also comes with a charging dock and a couple of other features that I think are pretty cool. So this is the one that I would recommend personally, but it is the more expensive option of the two that I just showed you. And then then another accessory that I would absolutely look at if you still want to play your original Switch in handheld mode would be the cracked Nitro deck. Now, one of the biggest things that I noticed on the original Switch is after a decent amount of play, the connections on the Joy-Cons, they start to malfunction and wear out. And so you'll be playing sometimes in handheld mode and the Joy-Con will disconnect from the console. And so it'll pause your game and you'll have to reconnect it, which can be super frustrating if you're playing Mario Kart online, for example. And so your option, if that happens, is to either pull the Joy-Cons apart and replace the connectors on the side, or getting new Joy-Cons. I'm not a huge fan of spending money with Nintendo on things that honestly should work and last for a decent amount of time. And so what I did was I bought the Nitro deck, and the cool part about it is it does not interface with the Switch on the side rails at all. It actually connects to the Switch using a USB connector right down here. So even if there's an issue with the Joy-Con connections on the side, you can still lock it into here and play it with no problem. I think the sticks on the Nitro deck are way better than the Joy-Cons. I just don't like Nintendo Joy-Cons, honestly. The only place where this lacks is the D-pad's not really my favorite. It's not bad. I think they just could have done a slightly better job of making it feel like some of the older Nintendo D-pads that we've all kind of grown up loving. If they had done something a little bit more along the lines of the 8-bit Do D-pad, this would be literally perfect. But instead we kind of have a D-pad that reminds me a little bit of a slightly more modern version of the Sega Dreamcast D-pad, which again isn't horrible, but it's not great. And then one final thing that you can get in order to really enjoy your Nintendo Switch, even if you're not ready to upgrade to the Switch 2, would be the Nintendo Online subscription. If you buy the Nintendo Online subscription, you can play a bunch of these multiplayer games online with people around the world or with family members that may live in different states or countries or whatever. And you get access to a bunch of original Nintendo ports. So NES, SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo 64. So you can play Perfect Dark on the Nintendo Switch. You can play GoldenEye on the Nintendo Switch. You can play all the Mario games from the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. Then there's also access to a bunch of Sega titles. So you can play Sega Genesis games like Vector Man and Sonic the Hedgehog. And to me, being able to play those games with save states is a lot of fun. So when I thought about making this video, I realized a lot of the games that I'm playing on the Switch 2 actually weren't even released on the Switch 2. And so I just sort of wanted to put this together and give those of you who just maybe don't have the financial means to go out and buy a Switch 2. Maybe you're on a Nintendo boycott because you just aren't happy about the crazy pricing with all their current stuff. But whatever the reason is for you not having one yet, you can still have an absolute blast playing the original Switch. And if there's any games in this list that you haven't played yet, you're gonna have an absolute ton of fun getting in and exploring a bunch of these titles. If you have any other ideas on things that you'd like to hear about or products that I should buy and test out, I would absolutely love to hear about them in the comments. And then if there's any other games that you feel like still hold up in today's market, drop them in the comments.